Hello and welcome to the North Metro SBDC programming.
So regardless of what county you're located in, it's really important to be able to communicate with the people that are, managing the CCAP in that county. Generally, there's a billing office, so somebody's managing like your backdated billing, somebody's managing, what your payments would be, your fiscal agreement. Like that is usually separate from the caseworkers, depending on how big your county is. So if you know like who the supervisor is of the caseworkers and you know who's managing the billing office, then that will help because you'll know who to go to for what. And then also know who to escalate things to. So if you're working with a caseworker and it's been a long time, like, I don't know, probably 10 days, 15 days since you sent in pay stubs or whatever it was you sent, know who to follow up with so that you can kind of escalate cases as they happen if you need help with that. Or who to send the parent to if you need to send the parent to somebody. Um, this other one is about access. So making sure that you're giving the parents whatever access you're able to print their own things off or scan things, or, maybe they need to log into their workplace portal to get their paycheck stub or whatever that may be. Like, what places do you have that you can provide a place for families to kind of get their documentation together? Or is it the library up the street? Like, where do you know that you can send families to so that they're able to kind of get their documentation for you to get together to send? And then how are you able to support families in sending their documentation? So do you have a scanner? Is that something you could buy? Can you mail something for them? Which mail is a really bad way to send stuff. But if you can send it electronically through email, that's usually the best because then you know that it's going to get there and you have documentation that you've sent it. And so that's really helpful. So you can just forward that email and say, here's the paycheck stubs I sent for Sandy. I sent it on January 5th and they still haven't been processed yet, or we're still kind of waiting, or whatever that may be. And then who is designated on your staff to help. So make sure that parents and families know who in your staff is able to help them. So if that's Sandy's job, maybe you just send out a memo to parents or put up a sign that says, like, if you need assistance with your CCAP, please talk to Sandy because she's able to scan and send in any documentation you may have.
We do have a question.
Yes.
How do you get the info of the case supervisor?
So the caseworker information should be on the authorizations. If it's not on there, you can ask the parent or you can ask CCAP for a caseworker list. So if you're not sure or somebody says, I have Tiffany, like, okay, you can get a caseworker list from the county and that should give you the contact information for that caseworker. Eugene, did you have a question? Okay. And then the other thing is, are you able and willing to send things on the family's behalf, and how do you track that? So although sending these things and trying to do some caseworking with families is helpful, you also want to make sure that you're not going to be, liable if they don't get it, or if something happens where it didn't get sent, or whatever it may be. Like if something doesn't work and you were going to send it for them and it doesn't get sent, then that can also be something the parents could be upset about. So it's best to say, you send it, I can send it with you or for you or CC your email on it or whatever that may be, so it's not fully on you. The other thing to think about is how you're tracking those authorizations. So is there a spreadsheet? Is it something in ATS that you can print? Is there a report that you look at every day? Something that I found kind of helpful is setting up an Excel spreadsheet, depending on how much you like Excel. But something that just has like the parent's first name, the parent's last name, the children they have. So we know that, all these children are on this authorization. And all this information will be on the authorization that you get in the mail. So just looking for those things so that you can put that on the spreadsheet. The authorization dates, so however long that goes for, if it's 3 months, if it's a year, whatever that is. And then the caseworker, if you know them, and their contact information. And then any notes on what would need to be extended for the authorization. So if they need to do a redetermination, if they need to meet with their TANF worker, if they need, paycheck stubs, whatever that may be. And then any follow-up you did just for your own documentation. So packet sent on behalf of parent on whatever day that is. But having this and sorting it in Excel by authorization expiration date can help you, because then you'll have, maybe you put the dates in red that expire in January, and then the ones that expire in February are yellow, and then the ones that expire in March are orange or whatever. Like if you can kind of sort out that sheet by when those authorizations expire, then that can help you be a little more proactive with families on making sure that things get set up the way that they're supposed to. I'm gonna pause for a second because I feel like the chat is having a lot of stuff.
There is a comment, Crystal saying that CCAP doesn't want providers contacting caseworkers directly.
So
Everyone's been given a general email for each county.
yeah, so Crystal, I think that kind of depends on what the county is, and if there is like a general email, then you could probably send it to that, and that would be fine. So I know for Denver, we have like providers at denvergov.org or something. Like whatever direction they've given you that you can get to somebody to get that documentation going, that can be really helpful. But it is kind of tricky. I mean, I think each county is kind of doing some different stuff too. Email's not helpful as it rarely gets answered. So that would be a like situation where you'd want to know who you can escalate that to. So like who is the supervisor you can talk to try to push things along, or if you can call with the parent. I mean, it is tricky because it's the parent's case, but it's also your enrollment and your income that's happening. So if you can call with the parent, maybe that's a way to kind of mitigate some of that. Any other questions about this so far? Okay. All right, going forward. So I'm going to give you guys like a quick minute in a breakout room to have you done any tracking that's been helpful? What tracking do you have in place? How are your relationships with the county? Do you know who to escalate things to? Do you have a place where your parents can print off documentation, and how is that working for you? Anything kind of related to these couple things we've already talked about, and thinking about, share something that's worked or something that's a challenge that we can talk about a little bit more in depth when you guys get back from the breakout rooms. Raul, are you able to make like 4 rooms?
Yeah.
Perfect. And we'll probably give this like 7 to 10 minutes, kind of depending on how much you guys are talking about it, but also think about any questions you want to talk about. I am not a CCAP County caseworker, but I can try to talk to you about whatever it is you might need some guidance on.
Okay, ready?
Yep. Go ahead, and we'll see you back here at 12:25. All right. Welcome back, everybody. So let's hear some ideas that you guys are doing that has worked. Is there anything that anybody heard that they think could be valuable for everybody?
We shared in our group that some of us are definitely helping families with emails, faxes, getting CC'd on emails between parents and counties, so that everyone's in on the loop, so that there's accountability for everyone, really, so that we know if a parent says, hey, this has been turned into the county, we know that because we were part of that process. Additionally, then if something goes MIA and the county comes back to the parent, we then can pull up for that family. Actually, here's the date of the email, the fax, the proof, yada, yada, so that things can be backdated, and the provider then also doesn't get the raw end of the deal, or the family and the child. So we kind of spoke how being part of that process definitely helps maintain the authorizations.
Yes, absolutely. I like what you said about accountability. I feel like I've been working with CCAP for like literally 20 years now. And it's always like, well, that was the parents' fault. It was the family's fault. It was the provider's fault. Like, no, we're not doing that. Gisette, what do you think?
Well, I know for us, we continue to do pretty much old school because, like Michelle was saying, we've got a lot of caseworkers, that if the parents need, sign-in sheets, or, they need to know, where they're at, and how they need their childcare, and they're coming full time, and if they don't sign in or sign out. So right now we're really we're really pushing, and this is something we're doing with the families, is letting them know, look, you have to clock in and out. Like this can't be, because now we're seeing, where they're telling some of the families, okay, you got 6 months, you're going to be on, daycare and then you're out, and that's like, oh my gosh, that's a family that we've had since they were babies, and, from Todd's all the way to school age. So we know that that family has 6 months, to figure something out. And because they're
Mm.
going to drop their case, their CCAP, and that family, who knows what's going to happen? Maybe the school agers will be able to go to Boys and Girls Club, but those babies are the ones we're worried about because this mom has to work. So I don't know. It's going to be, I think it's really going to be hard for families, especially the families that are low income. And in our
Yeah.
little group, that's what we were talking about, how important our low income families, and, they are working and they are struggling and they're having a hard time. And we see what they're doing. Where are they going to go and be able to get assistance? If it's taken away, because some of them don't have family members, so I think, we're trying to kind of, help them and guide them where to go, but it's kind of up in the air right now as we start this process.
Absolutely. Well, the last time there was a freeze that happened, I worked at Warren Village, and I think it was like 2013 or 2011. I don't know what year it was,
Yeah.
but Denver
Yeah.
CCAP froze, and so all of the families, well, not all, but a lot of them quit and went on TANF because they couldn't get childcare, so they couldn't figure that out. So they'd go on TANF, which isn't what we really want them to do because rolling over from TANF onto CCAP doesn't have a waiting list.
I
But then there's a lot
know.
of families that are like losing decent jobs because if their CCAP ends, they can't work.
Yeah. So, how is that family gonna better themselves? That's my worry, is they're not gonna be able, they're not working, or they're not getting their education that they need if they don't have, you know, I could see some families that aren't doing anything. I've always thought that they needed to be a little bit more hardcore on some families. It's like they're staying at home and not getting a job or not doing education or not doing something, that there should be some type of chart or something that they go by, hey, I
Right.
can see that you're doing this or you're doing that. And, therefore, of course, we're going to help you with CCAP. Then, that's where they should help with, maybe and do these other areas. But the ones that aren't really doing the stuff, that's where I think that needs to be a little bit different. But
Yeah,
it's a really hard thing to do and go through.
absolutely.
I also understand that they are not allowing families to move county to county anymore, that families are getting dropped.
Yeah.
So that's been a big challenge for us because we are in Denver, but Jeffco is literally across the street. We are
Mhm.
on the border. And so we have families that move, between those two counties quite regularly. And so now families have the choice of affordable housing or affordable childcare, but they can't have both. And we're right in a spot where we already lost a family because they moved like less than a mile. But that caused them to lose their childcare. So
No.
that to me is, I don't know how to prevent that. I've been educating the families, like, don't move, girl, don't move,
Right,
like,
stay
be
there.
careful. But like, yeah, it's too much to ask of a family to not move if their rent got too high, right? And
Right.
then putting them in that choice. So I don't know what the answer is. I have been notifying my families that they need to be really careful about relocation.
Mm-hmm. So in Denver, our counties directed us to continue having people applying because the counties get like certain amounts of that CCAP development block grant or whatever. So if the
Yeah.
counties can see, oh, okay, Arapahoe, Jefferson, Denver has like a really high demand, but we have like no demand in Larimer or whatever, like they can kind of trade around those funds that way. So I definitely tell you guys that,
Yeah.
like, keep encouraging parents to apply even though you know it's frozen, because maybe then they'll see like some trends that will help allocate the funding differently.
And that's what we're doing. We definitely tell the parents, there is a freeze, yes, but I would definitely still try, see what they can help you with. Maybe you can get some other type of resources, and I don't know if they're doing a waiting list or some sort, but
I think they're all
and
doing waiting lists.
that's wonderful. That's good. Because that's what we kind of been telling them. Maybe that's what they're doing.
Yeah. Crystal says she was told by a parent that Arapahoe is not back paying. So I'm told consistently that no counties are guaranteed to backdate. Like they do, but they will never tell you that they will guarantee that because they're just messy that way. So we're going to talk about that. Tuesday said we've been told the parents need to stay in their county until redetermination and then they can move. Yeah, I haven't heard that redetermination they're able to move to a different county. I don't know if there's any like eligibility, like excuses for that. Like, I don't know if there's any exceptions for redetermination being one of the things that you can do it. Adams and Weld allow it. Okay. You know what's really fun is that every county is different.
Yeah, we have contracts with 4 different counties. It's
Yeah.
great. Super.
You know, Colorado is only one of 7 states that is county driven. Like 7 states in the whole country are county driven, and Colorado is one of them. So like all the counties have a lot of power and individuality. Cool. Okay. Let's finish this up and then again we'll have more time to kind of chat at the end. So as Crystal said, like basically none of the counties are ever guaranteeing backdating. So we know that you're probably going to end up with gaps in the authorization. So if you're allowing that and you're going to charge the parent that rate or whatever it is you're going to do, however you're going to figure out how to pay for that, think about, are you going to allow a child to attend if their authorization's expired? How are you going to fund that? So is the parent going to pay for it? Are you going to try to get a grant for it? Are you going to do a fundraiser for it? Like, how are you going to make sure that that is paid for? Because otherwise you're just like having a big financial loss. And then if you do charge the parent, like what is your limit going to be for that? Because sometimes it's really easy for cases, you know, each day it's kind of like, oh, did you turn that in? I haven't gotten it yet. I don't know. Like, you really want to make sure that you're not letting it get so out of hand, especially if the parent's paying for it, that then they're not able to pay you back for that. So even just like a week for an infant could be almost $500. Like, how far are you going to let them go? And how are you going to figure that out? And then really have like a plan for that, you know, and make like maybe a chart. Like for infants, we can let them go 3 days without an authorization and that equals this much money. And after that, we're going to have to tell them they can't attend or whatever it is. Like figure out what your consistent guidelines are so that you're equitable for everybody and that you're telling everyone the same thing and you have the same guideline. Because you don't want to be like, oh, well, you can do that. Or I know she did it, so she can keep coming, but he didn't do, I don't know if he did it or not. So we're going to tell him he can't come. Like it just puts you in a bad situation if you're not being equal with everybody. So like kind of think about that. If you want to do some equity things with income and figure it out that way, I mean, it seems really complicated, but all more power to you. Just know like what your limits are going to be so you don't dig yourself into a hole. And then what can you do to fund this? So can you ask for donations? Can you do a fundraiser? Can you write a grant? I mean, it's hard sometimes to get grant funding for things that the people perceive the state should be paying for, but there might be like some small funders or some partnerships that you can do. Maybe it's a local company, like anything that you can kind of do to figure out how you're going to cover that gap, or if you can, you know, subsidize it in some kind of way. So definitely think about that too, because these gaps will happen. And where your endpoint is for all of those things. All right. The next thing is participating. So for Denver CCAP, we have like a CCAP collaborative that meets like quarterly, but that provides a space for Denver to ask questions to Denver Human Services staff. So if you're interested in having something like that in your county, maybe that's something you guys could talk to your county about, or ask your council to try to facilitate like some kind of conversation with CCAP updates or clarifications, like a lot of the things in here, like, well, can we backdate? Are we not allowed to backdate? Is redetermination a reason to move? Is it not? Can we get that in writing? Who said that? Like those kinds of things, like if you can ask your councils or some kind of entity in your area to try to facilitate that communication, that's really helpful. So the CCAP collaboratives for Denver, so I facilitate that. You can always come and ask questions, but because each county is different, it's not always helpful. But you could definitely ask like your council that serves your county if that's something that they might be able to help you facilitate, especially in light of the CCAP funding changes.
Now,
Did you have
Dora,
a question?
yeah,
Mhm.
sorry. So I was wondering, are you going to send these out like to all of us, like all these slides, only because so that way, like if I'm thinking of sending a message out to, you know, our, you know, CCAP, and this, you know, this way they could, maybe we can, they can send a bulk message out to everybody. You know, this is a good way to communicate with them. You know, this would be good. So if you could do that, that'd be amazing.
Yes, I can do that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So kind of along with that, also just staying updated on the CCAP state changes. So that could be signing up for the state newsletter, like the state CCAP information. That could be paying attention to your council's newsletters if anybody's posting anything. You can always sign up for the Denver newsletter, but again, like if there's state changes, it'll be in the Denver newsletter, but if it's anything county specific, it is really individualized, so it kind of makes a problem. Can we create a letter for the parent's employer? They don't want to, I mean, yeah, for sure. Advocate for your families however you feel comfortable doing that. Definitely. I mean, if you have an employee that, a family that can't get the letter from the employer or verification or paycheck stub or whatever, like definitely feel free to advocate however you feel comfortable. Because it is a problem. Like I'm sure there's a lot of employers that don't want to lose people just because of this, especially if they can help. Ensure that you're updated with the county to complete your fiscal agreements and to know when changes with your county are specifically happening. If there is like a county newsletter, it'd be important to sign up for that. If you have any kind of provider specialist at your county, that person would also be really good to know. And then talk to other providers about what's working for them. Like, I've tried this, it works for me. People love ELV. Like, if that might be an answer because you're finding this to be like too cumbersome with these case working things, like what support can ELV offer? Maybe meet with them and kind of think about that. ELV has the only contract with CCAP in the state. Like that data system has the contract that is able to administer CCAP. So you could meet with ELV and just kind of see like, what can you save me time on and how do you help families keep their authorization? We've had a gathering with Adams County CCAP here with our council and we plan to have another one. Yep, good. That stuff, I mean, you really want everyone to be on the same page. And I think that's kind of also part of the accountability is being clear on what the answers are and what the directives are so that you're not just kind of guessing. Sometimes CCAP is a lot like telephone and it shouldn't be that way, but that's because all the counties are independent. But yeah, definitely making sure that you're talking to people as well. Ooh, I got really excited there. Okay. So this is just kind of like a summary. So caseworking is vital. I know it can be a pain. It can take a lot of time. It does take whoever that staff person is time. Like, it can be long conversations with parents. It can be communicating with caseworkers, going to these meetings, reading this newsletter. Like, it's a lot of stuff, but the financial return of being able to really keep your CCAP families is important. Building those relationships at the county level. You can always just show up with some donuts and be like, hi, I'm here to meet the CCAP team, or give these to the supervisor, or I'm a provider. I appreciate how hard this has been for the workers. I wanted to do whatever. Like, knock yourself out. However, you can try to build up those relationships can really help you in the long term just by knowing who to talk to and kind of what to do and trying to build that the best you can. Stay in the know and make sure you're signed up for the CCAP Collaborative. If you're in Denver, whatever other county things you might have for your independent county or your council, those are always good to have. The state CCAP newsletter, and then any other local resources that might have some updates on CCAP. I'm gonna pause for the chat. Yes, people like ELV. So ELV is like a data-based system, so you can put in like your children's immunizations, your children's physicals, your staff information. Like it's basically kind of like a Bright Wheel or a ProCare. It's basically like a data management system, but ELV can help you kind of manage some of that a little bit. It's definitely, I mean, I can't really like specifically endorse anybody, but ELV is the best all-encompassing system that I think I've seen for data. That is it with that. Okay, cool. Provide access to your families to print, scan, and mail if necessary to support the reauthorization or at least know where they can go. Like, I don't have a scanner set up or my printer is forever out of ink and it's expensive and crazy, but you can go to this library right here. You do it for 10 cents a page. You don't need a library card, whatever it is. Like, know what access you can provide to your parents and what kind of resources you're able to give them. Think about those gaps in your authorizations and what your limits are and how you're going to find funding for that. And then ensure that you have an accurate tracking system for authorizations and informations that works for you and your staff. Information that works for your staff. So if you know that Sandy's normally the person that does it and Sandy's going to be on maternity leave, where does this document live and what does it look like and how do we know what to do with it? Or Sandy's not here, so now, Joe is going to be in charge of all the authorizations or whatever. Let's let all the CCAP parents know if you have an issue with your case, talk to Joe. He can do X, Y, and Z for you. Like, just make sure you have some kind of system and that everybody's familiar with what that should look like. I like keep pushing this down button, but it does nothing. Okay. Oops. All right. So again, have that designated person, make sure you're participating, you stay updated on information, keep the notes on the authorization so that you know what people need. Whatever information you can get about that authorization, just make a little note like, oh, they need paycheck stubs. I sent the stubs on March 1st. I got an answer back from the caseworker that one of them's missing. I told the parent on this day that he did. I mean, it's not easy, but all those little notes, like have a place to put all that. So if anyone's gone, somebody can look at that and know how to support them. If you must manually bill, ensure that you're communicating with the county and providing any documentation needed. I have a feeling that manual billing is going to get like more and more contentious just as the funds for CCAP get lower. So just make sure you have the documentation you need when you send that manual billing to them. All right, questions? I'm going to stop sharing my screen. All right. Hello, everybody. All right. Other thoughts? Anybody use ELV that wants to talk about that?
A couple of things. I use ELV, and when we first started, now we use it because of early Head Start, but I will say when we first started with it, we started with it solely for the purpose of the CCAP interface because it is by far superior. It creates, it pushes through on the ATS system. So when the ATS system is struggling, it is not, and it pushes everything through. So there is no crazy gaps in payment. Which is how we first started in it. So I will say that interface, if you have CCAP children, is superior. We use it for other things now because of early Head Start, but that interface is a key component. And then I will also just say here in our county, after our meeting with the council with Adams County, I really pushed for the county to share out some information on how parents qualify for CCAP and how parental fees are calculated and things like that nature, because I said one of the things that I think I might do, this may not be for every center, but one of the things I might do to last through this freeze is if I have a family that then meets those qualifications, I may choose to enroll them on a sliding scale until hopefully they can get back on CCAP. Because I may choose to do that to still enroll that family and help them to be able to afford it. And so I know, because I have that hot little flyer in my hand, I know that that flyer is headed out from Adams County to all providers. So if they choose to do something similar, that way, you know, we're as transparent as possible. We're following what would have been done with the county for CCAP anyway. So that I can only speak for that county, for Adams County, because I'm primarily that, even though I am contracted with many counties. I wanted to work primarily with Adams County. That's where most of my families are. And so that flyer is going out so that centers can then use that for a sliding scale if they choose to.
That's great. Yeah. I think one of the tricky things about when CCAP shifts is that so many providers like take that onto themselves. And so just be careful that you're able to, you know, we have such a heart for like the families that we serve. Just be careful not to get yourself into a hole, you know, because like who knows how, if that goes on for like 3 years and you're subsidizing a family, like that can be a lot of loss over time. It's a very messed up way that this works.
Yeah, I definitely think there needs to be guidelines and timelines, but of course, I don't want this to turn into the gross, like survival of the fittest for childcares. I want us all to be able to survive it. And so in trying to think about things that we can do, change up for ourselves and families, that was just an option.
Absolutely.
I have a question. Has everyone here considered or thought about like sort of projections on how your business might change? If you keep a certain percentage of families or don't keep a certain percentage of families, have you mapped that out and sort of try to guess what that might look like projecting out into the future some? If you haven't, can you put a 1 in the chat? I just want to see where everybody's at with that, thinking ahead and whatnot. And then a side question is like, what challenges do you perceive that you're gonna have if you lose, depending on how many CCAP families you lose? Do you know more or less what you think you might encounter challenges wise as a business if you lose a certain number of CCAP families?
I know for us in Pueblo County, it's going to affect us a lot because most of our clientele is housing authority with the housing authority of Pueblo and low income families. So some of our families, like at our, we have 3 locations, but one of our locations, most of our families walk. So they literally just walk over and, that could affect them, as far as transportation, as far as, because they, most of them even take a bus because the bus is close by so they can go to school or they work. So that might be definitely something that's going to be a hardship for a lot of our families. And we have right now with all locations, 85% is low income, is on child care assistance, is on CCAP. So 15% is on our sliding fee scale, which we get subsidized by United Way Agency of Pueblo County. And so that, it helps us there, but it's still not enough funding to keep our doors open, so it's definitely going to be a challenge.
Thanks for sharing.
Yes.
So we're located in the poorest neighborhood in Denver. And I definitely opened to this program with CCAP as, an essential part of the model because I wanted to serve the neighborhood. So I have actually changed my marketing strategy and I'm now doing marketing targeted at families that make $80,000 a year or more. And I'm no longer targeting families that make less than that. And that is really sad. And it feels wrong to be in the poorest neighborhood in Denver serving, full pay families. But, I got to stay open. I try and pay my employees above market rate and give good benefits and all those things. And I can only do that if we have income. And so that's my strategy, is to go from serving lower income families to serving higher income families.
Totally makes sense.
That also feels sad. It's too bad you have to do that. It's heartbreaking.
It is.
Any other specific challenges, unique challenges that you feel you're facing in this transition?
I put in the chat, I don't know if anyone else has heard the possibility I would imagine if you take CCAP, a lot of CCAP providers also do food program. And if you received notice that funding may also temporarily end.
Where did
Yeah,
you get that notice from, Michelle?
That was emailed to me by
It was
program.
emailed from our
Yeah.
CCAP reps, and it came from someone higher up in the state.
I got it too, Dora. Yeah. For
You
Pueblo
could
County,
probably
we
reach
got
out to the food programs, and any of them might share it with you.
Okay. I did not hear about that. Every day it's some new adventure. All right, great.
Yeah.
I mean, I think as business owners, operators, we have to just assume that for the next 5 years, there's just not going to be funding for feeding and caring for children, that we should just not assume the government is going to do whatever we can to make it happen, but we should probably assume the government is not going to be interested in supporting our work and make business strategies around not relying on government funding of any sort, really. I don't think it's going to be there.
Yeah. I agree.
And I think it's hard because with licensing, for all of our centers, we have to keep a certain ratio, and those of us that are ELV, Early Learning Ventures partners, we have to have 2 teachers in a classroom at all times. So it's really, you have to have your ratios, up to par, and and so it's really going to be a struggle for everybody, I think, that way
Yeah.
as well.
I wish I had a magic answer for this, and I don't. But I wish I did. If I win the lottery, I'm gonna give all of you guys all the money I win.
Okay, sounds good.
So,
Well, my
in
understanding is
general-
we only need like $50 million to cover the gap, Dora. If you
Okay,
could like
guys, we should
search
all
around
pitch
in your
in
couch
on lottery
cushions
ticket.
for
We'll just
that.
all
Let's all-
Yeah.
50 million is crazy. That's a lot. Okay. All right.
So, and part of what we brought this talk and a series of talks that we're going to be having moving forward is to try to understand this problem better and work to get creative. So as a business center and thinking a lot in terms of just profitable business, venture, strategy, et cetera, that's sort of the mindset that we've always had is how do you create a business that can run, create revenue, new revenue streams, cut costs, things of that nature, but still providing high level of care to all families, right? I think that's an important consideration across this. So stay tuned. We don't have all the answers, like Dora said. Stay tuned. We're going to be working on that. If you have ideas, we'd love to hear more, and maybe there's an opportunity to get sort of more of like a brainstorming session together around this. Furthermore, some of you have already participated in our Fundamentals for Childcare class before. I don't know if anyone here has not, but we are going to be having another one of those coming up soon. We don't have the exact dates yet. But if you are interested in that, just getting on the wait list, I'll put that in the chat here. And then also Dora does free one-on-one advising through various channels. So I'll put her link in the chat as well. That's a little tricky on our site. There's two booking options. The top one is you can just ignore it. The bottom one where it says childcare, you can book an appointment through there. That's specifically where you want to go. Dora, do you want to say anything specifically about the Fundamentals for Childcare class that might be relevant for everyone here to
If
just
you guys
learn
haven't-
about things that we might cover that will be helpful?
Yeah,
Yeah,
if you guys
Dora.
haven't done the fundamentals class, it's really good because it has a lot of the specialists specifically from the SBDC. So as much as we all like specialize in childcare, there a lot of these consultants have some really good perspective and different things for us to think about that are not like as childcare specific, which is really helpful for like trying to be creative about how to approach finances, marketing, budgeting, HR, all that kind of stuff. Like the specialists from the SBDC are really great. So even just for that, like I think they're normally like 150 an hour or something. So being able to get that as a part of also taking that class is really helpful.
I'll endorse it, Dora. I did it last spring. It was really good. I recommend if you guys want to think about not just licensing, but your business side of your business, it's a really good place to go for that.
Yeah, thank you, RB. And I think that's it for today. Dora, did you have any other last thoughts?
No, I think that's it.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Dora, and thank you everyone for being here. And this is an ongoing conversation, so stay tuned. We'll try to help you guys solve this as much as possible.
Thanks,
Thank you, we
everybody.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.